In this week's episode, we sat down with Harley Cantrell, the owner of PandaMomo Catering. And the name is just the beginning of such an incredible story. We're going to walk you through the beginnings of fatherhood, going into the corporate world, and then betting everything on himself and opening his own business. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Tell Us Your Story.
Welcome to Tell Us Your Story. Join us as we step into the arena with business owners, leaders, and influencers. Hear their stories as they navigate challenges, opportunities, and victories on their journey to success. As Theodore Roosevelt once said, it is not the critic who counts, but the man or woman who is actually in the arena.
I grew up in Woodland, California.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
I'm a Woodland boy. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Woodland, California. Was born down south, but moved to Woodland when I was 3. Got a chance to grow up there. Went to Woodland High, all the good stuff. I have an older brother, 7 years older than me. So that was kind of funny.
Super interesting. I know Woodland well. I have a lot of friends that used to play in the softball leagues there. And
nice.
I lived there for, 5-6 years. But
you're wondering who you both know.
Yeah, it's going through my head. We'll do that after.
There's probably going to be a lot of mutual friends there.
There has to be somebody, yeah.
Oh, very nice. And so how you have one brother.
Yes.
Mom and dad married throughout you growing up? Or?
Yeah. My lost my mom a few years back and my dad a couple years ago. But yeah, they stayed married the whole time.
What'd they do for a living?
So my dad was a mechanic. He did a multitude of different things, but he was more so a mechanic like the bulk of his life. And my mom was an artist. She did, she did waitressing, just a lot of just, blue collar type work, but she was always a ham. She was always definitely a character.
And so growing up, you're an entrepreneur, which we'll get to that in your business. But growing up, what was the dream? Did you have a dream?
So the dream, ironically enough, was I always did art. Art was always like something that was a huge part of my life, being creative. When I was a kid, I always thought I was going to be a comic book artist. So I was always drawing comics and like kind of creating my own little worlds. Then I went off to art school. I got a scholarship after high school to go to CCAC in Oakland. Got a chance to go there, experienced it, but I was like, not really feeling like putting in 8-hour studios, just doing this. It kind of like, it wasn't that I lost my passion for it, but I just realized that there was something different that I wanted to do.
So was it more that you had this perception or idea of like the fun of drawing, which you love to do, versus the 8-hour commitment of whatever they were having you do?
Ironically enough, it was more so the money part of it, believe it or not. It was like, it's very rare to be able to come on out and be able to tie a passion in with the financial aspect of it. Yeah. And that was a huge element of it. And I didn't really know what direction. I think at that time, DreamWorks was getting ready to start. And they scouted our school and they said, all right, graduate from here and then you can come work for us. But I didn't want to be an assembly line artist. Got it. And that's what that really just kind of made me pull back a little bit, because I just didn't want to be that you're one of 100 artists on an assembly line just drawing thousands and thousands of pictures with not out having that meaning behind it.
Oh, that makes sense. Do you still draw?
I do, actually. Yeah, not as much as I used to, but I still do. Yeah.
Very, very cool. And so take us through that transition. So what did you end up doing as a career?
So the interesting thing was I started working for a grocery store because I needed a job. I was out of school and just needed to start working. Well, I got into produce department, and the company that I had worked for at the time, they were very creative with the way that they merchandised, and I had creative autonomy. And I realized I was like, okay, I'm changing one art form into, in my mind, I viewed it as another art form. It was like building and sensory awareness and all these different things. So I really got into that, and then just kind of found a niche in grocery and just kind of climbed the ladder, started learning the business financials of it. And
so was this in Woodland?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to have to ask a question. Maybe this is where maybe we know each other. So I worked at Nugget for about
yes, I did. I worked there too.
And so where did that take you? You obviously left. Was it, talk us through that.
So one of the things that really worked out really well was I got a chance to go from a courtesy clerk knowing nothing about the business, and then grew and stayed with it and got a chance to be a director. and ran a store for 5 years, I believe. Was with the company for 11, learned a ton about business financials, got a chance to work with a lot of executive chefs, got a chance to kind of really, because of the realm that I came from with produce, tying in the food element of it, I was able to utilize that for like merchandising and being able to kind of get into the business fundamentals and teaching my crews. And that was this thing that I really, really enjoyed. So, but at a certain point, I kind of got where I had reached a cap at as far as I could go with that company, because you're not going to be an owner. Yeah. Usually smaller companies, there's a cap that you have.
Absolutely.
So I ended up, my wife at the time, we had an opportunity to where she was offered a great job, and she had said, do you want to switch roles? Because we had just had twins and she was home with them and we had always been in corporate. And she had said, do you want to switch roles? And of course, my ego initially was like, I'm not going to be a stay-at-home dad. That ain't going to happen. But then she said, just think about it. We thought about it. We talked about it. And I ended up going into that role. And not too many people know that, I was a stay-at-home dad, and which to say it out loud was one of those things where I left the company I did. I wasn't fired or anything along those lines. But I left and took a leap into the unknown. And then I had that first oh no moment when she went off to work and I had twin girls that were a year old. And I was like, what am I going to do all day? I was like, I have no idea. But the great thing is, I look back on it now they're 14. That time was so precious. It was only 3 years. And then I jumped right back into the corporate world. But that 3 year helped create a bond that I have a totally different respect now for stay-at-home parents. The priority was always there, and our bond is like unlike anything now. And it's because of that time.
Yeah, that's incredible. Can I ask you a question? So 2 things, because one, the stay-at-home parent, but before that, you're to be honest, I think most people don't think there's so much opportunity in like the grocery store. Like you said, you were working with chefs and all of this stuff. So a little bit about that. Was that you just finding opportunities and what was around you? Or because I feel like that's probably led into some of the knowledge you use to run your own business now. So was that you just searching that out, or were those opportunities presented to you?
I think the opportunities were there, but I don't think everybody fully went after the opportunity. It would be like, well, if I came up through grocery, I kind of lean more towards the grocery side of things. But I was fascinated by the meat department. I was fascinated by the chefs. The culinary aspect of it always triggered in my head. And so I'd always go deeper into those aspects and really ask, well, why do you prep and do it this way? And then I would listen. And all the while, I had no idea that I was going to be like, that's planting those seeds of future progress like in my head, because one of the things I never thought about was, yes, I was learning the business aspect of it, but it was also learning the creative like fundamentals of, hey, if you're going to run a kitchen or if you're going to build something like this is how you have to do it.
Yeah, it resonates with me because I have older kids. I have a 31, a 26, and a 23. And then our teams we would talk to as they were coming in, regardless of what the role was, I'd always be like, learn it all. Yeah. Like in 2 years, you will thank yourself. And if you're a 22 or 23-year-old, when you're paying your dues, it's like, learn every part of that job right now. And I promise you, you will set yourself apart. Yeah. The gap gets bigger and bigger from those that don't, which sounds like to her question, that's what was happening with you as you were learning it opened up opportunities.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we had a team, I think each store that I ended up running had a range of like 120 team members. So it's a constant juggle act. Like you're partial HR, you're a business partner, it's all these different things, but you're juggling all of it. And so I think that part was kind of cool to be able to meld all those together.
It teaches you a lot. Yeah, if you're not solely focused or single-minded, I think that's where a lot of my career growth has come from, just being interested or trying or seeking to understand, and pretty soon you said you were there for, you have 11 years now of this experience that's teaching you. So I was fascinated. I don't think everybody grabs onto or recognizes, like you said, the opportunities are there. So it's really cool.
Yeah. And it's a phenomenal company. So nothing negative to say.
Yeah. Which is good. So then you make the leap to stay-at-home dad. So outside of your ego, which is great that you can admit that, because I think a lot of people have that problem. It just taking a step back from corporate, there has to be also the fears of that, of just like, I'm like money wise or business wise, or what if I take this time off and then I can't go back, things like that. Was all of that going through your head?
Oh, it was a multitude of emotion and feelings, because I had always been kind of like that up and coming leader. And then when I was in that leadership position, I had teams that were very big, and they, it was constant interaction, 50-hour weeks, 50 to 60-hour weeks, some weeks. Mm-hmm. So it's like you get this, it's like you're a shark in water. You're used to constant movement, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden I woke up and I got to dictate my day. I got to dictate my day with my girls, and I got to reprioritize, because what I realized is, even in that first year of my daughter's lives, I was gone for every single holiday. And anybody that comes from that industry, I mean, in retail in general, the holidays is where it's at. It's no harm to the business. That's where you make your money. And as a director, I had to be there. So I missed out on these little things. And what I was finding is, when I was home, I was exhausted. I was already that, and I was young. I think I was like 30, early 30s. And I was already turning into the old man napping. And I was like, I'm not ready for that yet, because I was physically exhausted, Yeah. And I found that like my eating habits were getting really bad. And they were just like, I was still working out, but I wasn't taking care of myself as well as I knew I could have. The food part was like, I had my bakery people that was like, hey, can you undercook those cookies just for me? And then I would, it's like, yeah, I would eat the bag of cookies, and I just wasn't taking care of myself. So right before I ended up leaving and coming home, I made my health a priority, and I started rolling into that, and I got in phenomenal shape in my 30s. I was like, man, I'm feeling really good right now. So when I transitioned into home, I was like, okay, well, now I've got to fill my days with my twins. So we had a double stroller, and I'd saddle them both up, and we would go on 6-mile runs. I'd take them to the gym with me. I took pride in getting them ready, and learned how to do hair, learned how to do braids. And, I took a lot of pride in making sure that they felt good about themselves when we went out. And I think whenever you get a dad with twins, it's always kind of novelty wherever you end up going. Yeah. But they're very much social butterflies, just like me. And so it was really cool. So that 3-year was very humbling, because I went from being the sole provider to being the caretaker type role. And when I said that the ego had to really kind of reset, because, and I can say this now because it's been many, many years past, it was hard for me emotionally to say I'm a stay-at-home dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let me ask you a question there. And let me preface it with saying I have the utmost respect for stay-at-home dads and stay-at-home moms. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. You come off, look like a guy's guy. Imagine you have guys friends. Mm-hmm. And those guys, when you went to stay-at-home dad, and I have friends that were like, there was some ribbon.
Oh,
there was some pushing. How much did that stay with you when it was that, or are they close enough to get it?
Ironically enough, it's so funny, because it's like, in the grand scheme of things, you get work friends, and that could be acquaintances that are all over the place. Like, you could say I have 50, 60 work people that I felt really tight with. But then when you end up leaving sometimes the company, you realize, ooh, maybe I only held on to about 2 or 3 people. Mm-hmm. And then after years, if those people are still there, they're your core. So I got a little bit of ribbing. Playful, but I knew it was coming from a fun place, and guys are going to mess with each other. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, my stress levels were at unhealthy levels where I was at when I was with the company. And I knew for my longevity, I needed to separate from that and reset and kind of roll into it. But it took a long time for me. I would say, if I'm being completely honest, it took me over a year to finally be able to say, at a dinner party, they're like, oh, so what are you doing? And you're hearing, oh, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor. And then all of a sudden you get this guy's guy coming on, I'm a stay-at-home dad. You know what I mean? But then it was, what I had to say, I had to learn to say was, you say it with your chest. You know what I mean? And,
good for you.
And it took a few times for me to kind of say it, because at the time I got my certification in fitness nutrition and personal training. And that was like old school, the way I kind of got my start way back in the day. I felt like I needed to have those just to kind of say, oh, I'm a trainer, but I'm not really a stay-at-home dad. You know what I mean? So even though I was doing personal training, that wasn't my real job, if I'm being totally candid.
Society has changed. Do you think it would be easier now? It's more acceptable. I do. Like when I think through it, like Kobe Bryant, your girl's dad, like it's celebrated. Do you think it'd be easier now or just as difficult making the transition?
I think now would be infinitely different because, it would be so much easier for most people now because I think a lot of people it's the TikTok generation, it's the Instagram generation. So it's like, I think that a lot of people are more socially accepting of a lot of like stay-at-home dads, stay-at-home moms. I think more so now because it's in people's faces more. People have more access to it. It's normalized more. I think that's the better terminology, I think.
Yeah, it's so fascinating.
And a lot of people are doing, not that it's, side hustle, but to your point is there is this kind of freedom of, making your own day, doing all this. You could be stay at home and then also have your TikTok channel, all those things. So there's different ways to do it. So is that what led you? It sounds like fitness was always a thing, grocery. So when did you start? Is that when you kind of started the cooking or take us into that?
So the funny thing is, my twins, they've always been little cooks with me since they've been able to stand up to the countertop with me.
And what are their names?
Ellie and Andy.
Okay.
And they've always been able to, they'll crack eggs. They've always been right at my hip, which is fantastic. We made their food, growing up. So, we didn't do jarred food. So they were used to being, they were bred to be little foodies, so to speak, right out the gate. So that could be very expensive later down the road that I found out.
Yeah.
But one of the great things is by us doing that, I had that time to be at home, to shop with them. Ironically enough, where I'm at now is all owed to making cookies. I know that may sound funny, but I started making cookies because I always really was horrible at baking. And I was more of a savory, would barbecue for the buddies, UFC fight night, come on over. Yeah. They knew I would cook. But then I started getting into cookies and made literally thousands of batches. And I would start I had this idea in my head of how I wanted them to be packaged and but it just really wasn't the time for me to go after that because my main job was being the dad and taking care of the girls. So as it continually progressed, life changes and things move around. And I ended up going through a divorce. And after the divorce, I was like, you know what? I want to give this a shot because I had already been meal prepping and doing my meal prep for myself.
Yeah.
You know how that can end up. All it takes is a buddy kind of going, hey, dude, what do you got there? Can you bring me one? Yeah, no problem. You bring one, and then they're like, can you make me 10? And I'm like, yeah, but you got to pay for the food, dude. I'm like, I'm not going to make all that, So that's how the basics of it kind of started. And the brainchild really started in COVID, the first year of COVID, because I had already been with another larger, so I traded up to a much bigger grocery company and was a director with them for a long time as well. But during COVID, you realized that a lot of people were scared. They wanted to go to restaurants, but they didn't have access to being able to go. And so I had a couple friends that wanted me to meal prep for them. I did. And then those people recommended me to another set. And then it actually worked out kind of cool. I started doing it on the side. So I do my corporate gig, 5 days a week. And then on my 5th day, I'd pick up my twins. And then we would go grocery shopping and I would put down my laundry list. And it started with 3 clients. And then those 3 clients, they would bring their food and then people would see them eating and then those people would reach out. And everything, if I'm being completely candid, was completely guerrilla warfare right out the gate. Because I had no idea I knew how to run the business, but I had no intention of this being a full-time thing. This was just getting some added money.
So when you're starting, for those, everyone hears meal prep. Let me see if what I'm thinking about is what was happening. So when I think of meal prep, I'll meal prep on Sundays, and I might have 4 meals, for a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Put them in Tupperware, and that's what I'll just go and eat. That's what I'm thinking of meal prep. So you were doing this for whether it was for athletes or friends, people that had a healthy lifestyle, I
Yes.
would assume. You weren't putting cake in there and things like that.
No.
It was a healthy lifestyle. And then it started catching on.
Yeah.
And how did it start to grow? It was just organic through people seeing other people eating it, conversation.
Yeah. The thing that really helped out tremendously was I'd never been really big into social media. I, was on like Instagram and would like look at goofy videos and different things like that. But it wasn't anything I took as a business tool. So I started on my original Instagram, which was just my name. I would post like an overall picture of like what my meals looked like. And then I would get a little hit here and there. And I only had like maybe 100 to 200 followers. No big deal. Then I made another site that was based in food. And so the bulk of it was like food. And then I went to 6,000 followers. And I was like, whoa, how did I go from like 200 people to like 6,000? I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. So it just continued to build momentum, and people would DM me, hey, I'm over here in Sacramento. Can you do this? And I started getting a little bit nervous because I'm like, I've got my other main gig. I only have basically 1 day a week, and I was burning out what was happening because I did it for about 2.5 years where I was working 7 days a week, just nonstop. I had the twins. They would come with me on deliveries, but I started making more and more money with the meal prep deliveries.
Wow.
And like catering events that wasn't even really a thing. I'd do one every now and then, but it was more for friends. But as that continued to build, the social media started growing. And then when I jumped all in on this, because I realized grocery was grocery, which was an amazing part of my life. And I owe a lot of my success now to everything that I learned in grocery. So I don't want to take anything away from that. But at the end of the day, I never really felt like that was my ultimate calling. Like when I went into work, it was a good job. I didn't feel like lit up inside. When I'm cooking, it was something triggered that was completely different. It legitimately felt like, okay, I was meant to be here to do this for my communities. I was meant to do this for the people that I love, and to make people's healthier lifestyles, because mine is very clean, it's very healthy, it's very real food. But I wanted to be able to give back to my community with good quality food that is not just McDonald's or Burger King or anything along those lines.
So I love it. So let's dive into it a little bit as you're going through this transition. So, I've just recently left my corporate as well. And you always say, well, not everybody, but I would love to do this on my own. And you start to look at things. You're like, how much money do I make? What's my benefits? All of those different things. What am I going to make? How long is this going to take? How much of that did you go through? Like you had started, so you had money coming in, but how much did you struggle with? I'm leaving the safety net of a corporate gig and I'm going all in on myself. Like, was it a week, a month, a couple years? Like, walk us through some of that struggle.
I would say that initially when I jumped all in, it was complete panic. I'm going to be completely candid. It was panic. It was fear. It was all the what ifs, all the imposter syndrome. It all hits like right at the same time. Even though you've got money coming in, you've got it going. It went from being a side hustle to the main hustle. And you always had the safety net, like you said, of having that steady bread and butter every week. And then the money was the extra on the side. But I had said to myself at the time, when I officially went all in, I'm 46 now. I almost forgot my age. 46 now. When I went all in, I was 43. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I have to do it now. And I don't want to be retired at like 60 and said, I had a small window, but I was too scared to take it. I would rather go all in and see what I can do. The great thing is immediately when I did it, I almost tripled my business like that right out the gate.
And did you expect that?
I didn't. And that's the thing that's the thing that shocked me. But the thing is, in this game, it's very feast and famine in the beginning. Even still at this day, like sometimes you get people, they'll go hard to the hole. They'll be like, I want every single meal, like, they'll order 20 meals a week. They'll do it for a month and then you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just wanted to look good for, that one vacation, which is great. But one of the things I had to come to terms, and it's like these levels of an onion. I came to terms and realized that it wasn't, they're all part of it as well. I'm just as happy to help out that person that's wanting to help lean down for their vacation as I am with the client that wants to do it for maybe a week or 2 weeks while they're on business, or the client that's with me. I have some clients that have been with me for years that they depend on this, you know, and those are my core. But the thing is, I've learned that I can't take it personally, because initially when somebody would order for a month or two and then you don't hear from them again, it's easy to let that, oh, did my food taste bad? Did I anger them in some way? So the imposter syndrome starts kicking in. And you're kind of going, maybe I could have done a little bit more, you know, instead of realizing this is a numbers game and you have to build reputation, and don't let those things like get underneath your skin. You know?
And it's interesting. So Natasha and I have this conversation all the time. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but we'll call it spotlight syndrome, where I think the spotlight's always on us, right? And to your point, like somebody ordered their food, a million reasons that had nothing to do with you, but you feel like the spotlight's on you. Like, that had to have been me. And they just ran out of money, or they wanted that vacation and they were done. So I know a lot of people go through that. As you were going through that transition, when you think back, when I ask this question, I want to know if it's immediate. Do you remember who your support system was?
Yeah, I still do. I have an insane amount of gratitude for the amount of people that I have. I have a huge amount of very marquee people that have helped me along the way, and have just been amazing support systems, whether it be business. I've mentioned a lot of realtors that have been, you know, who would have ever thought that realtors would have been like one of my best clienteles, but it actually does make sense, because they know so many people and they are constantly on the go. And a lot of them had said, hey, Harley, I'm getting tired of eating bad. I just want something home for myself and my family when I get home that I can throw in the microwave or bring with me to the office. And there are a couple people that just really stood on out, that just in those down times where, you know, you get in your own head, go, man, maybe I really should go back into, you know, grocery or something else. And there's going to be those times where you think that, and they're like, you were getting so close. When you're doubting yourself the most is when you need to push through. They said, it's just, they're like, you work out. They're like, you're never going to get to that next level if you don't push through that pain. And I'll be honest, even like today, I had these thoughts. So I don't think it's anything that goes away. I think there is a constant reminder. Like, there is one book that was my North Star, and it was The Alchemist.
I've heard of it. Haven't read it.
Yeah, me too. It's been on my list for so long. I need to bump it up.
So good. And in fact, I'm big on audiobooks just because I'm always on the car. And that one, just, I burned through it, but it's just all about like these journeys that you go through and how bad do you really want it. And I'm probably going to murder this quote, but one of the quotes, or one of the parts in the book that really just stood out to me was, if you want something bad enough, the entire universe will conspire to help you achieve it. I know I probably murdered that quote, but that's basically what it is. And I always thought about that one thing. I'm like, if you really want it, because so many people say they want something, but then when they get the first roadblock and they hit that first thing, they kind of go, oh, no. And then they immediately pull back. So I have a lot of respect for people that actually will go into the game. And like, it's easy to say, oh, well, he could have, you know, I always got a lot of buddies that I've talked to in the past. They were like, yeah, well, this quarterback should have done this or should have done that. I'm like, did you ever play ball? And they're like, no. And I'm like, well, then you have no way to say anything then. You know, I play ball, so I understand what it felt like to get hit in the ribs and what that feels like when they make a comment going, oh, that wimp, he just came out of the game. I'm like, you ever been hit in the ribs? It doesn't feel good, you know?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. So I have more respect for people that go after it and actually have some skin in the game, whatever business it is, versus somebody that's just going to be an armchair quarterback.
So along that nature, and I want to get to your current business, but I love this conversation. What about the critics? What about during that time? Did you have people that are like, and maybe it was a family member, a cousin, who knows, that says, hey, you're taking a pretty big risk. Just stay where you're at, get your retirement. How many, like, did that ring in your head? Did you have those conversations?
It was constant.
Yeah.
I mean, it was constant. And the thing that kept driving in my head, the more and more I thought about it was, I'm like, just watch, keep doubting me, because I'm a very competitive person, and I was just like, keep doubting me. If you, and I'm going to show you, I'll show you. But then it switched at a certain point where I was like, I'm not trying to show anybody. I'm doing this for me. And then you kind of take your power back, because it goes from a point of, okay, now I want to shove it down everybody's faces that are doubting me. Now I get it to where I'm doing this because I want to do it, and because it's the right thing. It's because it's my passion, not anybody else's. And I've had to learn to turn down the outside critics just to kind of help me stay more focused. And that was something that still is a process, but I had to start. So when I started the business, I started a brand new Instagram again. I'm like, oh, okay, lucky number 3. This one's going to be, so it's called PandaMomo, which is what my business is named after. But I started with 0 people, and then in like a year, I grew it to like 20 grand or 20,000 followers organically, and I just started fine-tuning videos. I'm still learning like how to do those, and studying up, and like taking the classes, constantly listening to podcasts, constantly listening to, like, Mel Robbins has been, like a North Star. I know I've mentioned that again, but if as podcast goes, she's been in the dark spots, and she's no problem talking about it.
Yeah, it's give me goosebumps, because when I think of the generations that are coming up, and the assumption that there's this quick path to success, right? And it does happen for some people. They put a TikTok on and they all of a sudden they blow up. That's not the norm. That's the exception. All of the time that you spent in learning and listening to podcasts, all of that to get to what you do for your business, nobody sees all of that. Yeah. And I think it's important for everybody that if you want to be good at anything, it's just not that one thing. You have to do everything around it, and you have to put the time in. And I think a lot of people want that fast track. Like, I deserve it, I should have it. And it's like, well, you still got to put the time. We all have to put the time in to get good. So I love that.
And I love how your point of, once you get to that spot where you are more confident, it's almost like you don't have to say it out. Once you're good with yourself and what you're doing, it's like, oh, I don't have to be so, that's how you really know. Yeah. And that comes from the work. It comes from the self-develop, all that stuff that's like tying into it. So I love it. I have to, before we forget, I think you have a nice story about how you named your business, PandaMomo. So can you just share that before we get into some details on the business?
Yeah, so it's always so funny. So people think that I sell a multitude of different things when they hear PandaMomo, because they don't really know what that is.
Yeah,
and if you go
me included.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, when I heard it the other night, I was like, you do kind of just feel like it's a certain type of
sell
cuisine.
Anime stuff? Is it like,
what is
no,
that?
so it's really funny. So one of my twins, her name is Andy. She got the nickname from her grandma, Panda Bear. And we're not really sure the origin of why she said Andy Panda, and then it just stuck with Panda. And Ellie, so it's my other daughter. She ended up, like, it started with Ellie and went to Elmo, then it went to Momo. And then when I was coming up with names for the business, I had thought, I was like, okay, well, this is going to be Harley's Cooking, Harley's Kitchen. It was all like my name based. Mm-hmm. And I was like, why am I really doing this? I'm doing this for not only myself, but my family. And then I started going, well, Panda and Momo, PandaMomo, PandaMomo. And then I was like, well, wait a minute, let me make sure nobody's got that line on there. And looked online, nobody had it. And I was like, okay, that's it. And so PandaMomo is actually the name of the business is after my twins. My Panda and my Momo.
That must make them feel good.
They do like wearing the gear and like the sweater and stuff, and like their friends swag. Every now and then will like comment on a post I make, and I try to on my Instagram I try to incorporate them at like some of the events. They will work with me on like bigger events, and and they're very happy to wear the shirts. Let's say PandaMomo, and just being able to do that, but. Yeah,
that's super cool. So walk us through PandaMomo. Yeah. So you're doing the meal prep.
Yes.
How does this transition, or is that what PandaMomo is? Walk us through it.
So PandaMomo is the meal prep catering. So that's been fantastic. I finally put together a website, and that was something that was like the next level up. And I got that about a year and a half ago. Before that, like I said, it was all kind of guerrilla warfare. It was like, hey, I send out a menu on my Instagram, DM me, and then we'll go from there. Then the website actually legitimized it a little bit more, because then people could go, I could put on the new menu, they click what they want, it puts in their order, they pay for it, it goes from there.
So it's not an individual. This isn't just big corporate or big events. You do it on the individual level as well?
Yeah, and my menu changes every week, which is great, because just I get tired of cooking the same stuff every single week, and it keeps the variety, and I will transition into whatever is seasonal at that time frame. So the fruits, veggies, all those, just kind of like whatever's popular at that time, and the most fresh is what I'll end up cooking with.
I love it. So I'm going to ask from the customer's point of view, because I'm going to be a customer.
Yeah.
So I think I understand, but I want to make sure I ask questions. So if I'm just looking for lunch today, can I get lunch today and have that delivered? Or is it a 24-hour?
So that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So I put out the new menus on Tuesdays, and I have 3 delivery days. So we have a minimum order of 10 meals. And then so you would place your order by Thursday, and you would get delivered on either Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, depending on what day that you fall into the rotation, depending on where you live.
And so 10 meals, can we freeze these?
Yeah. So the thing that really works out well is the packages are freezer friendly and microwavable friendly. Oh. So it works out perfect, because I have a lot. And the reason why I had to end up going with the 10 meals is when I initially started, I was doing like 2 meals here, 3 meals there. And I was literally driving everywhere all day long, and it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
And then I also opened up what does everybody feel like eating? And then I was getting 50 different things. I was trying to kill myself, trying to feed everybody, and doing 2 chicken breasts for this one. So I realized, through process of trial and error, okay, so we will do 3 different proteins. It's usually a beef, a chicken, and a seafood of some type. And then 3 different sides. And all you got to do is just pay, hey, I want this with this. And you get to combine them. I get a nice little clean printout of what everybody wants. Everything that's different from my meal prep, because I am still much smaller than the larger ones, is everything that you get is literally packaged and delivered the same day. No other meal prep company does that. Well, because I'm not delivering 50,000 every day, but yet.
But you've optimized. So when I think through that, my operational side comes in. Mm-hmm. So you went from helping everybody to, okay, I'm going to have my 3 proteins and everything that goes along with it. I'm making numbers up, 100 pounds of chicken at once, and then you're putting all of these together. Very, very cool.
Did that, so operational, I went to the same thing, is like at some point, and you said you learned. So it's like, hey, this isn't sustainable. This probably isn't scalable. How do I do it? Did you have concerns that making a change like that? Sometimes I think people are so afraid of upsetting the customer or the clientele. Like, oh, what if I do this, which is good for me, makes sense because this is how I can scale my business. But what if they don't like it? What if I lose people? Was there any thoughts like that worried you?
Yeah, there was. And I did lose clients because they kind of, not to say this, but they did kind of get a little spoiled. They got everything the way that they wanted it. But I had to understand really quick that it wasn't their job to maintain how I was feeling, how much I was busting my tail for the 50 other clients that I was doing the same thing for them. I just had to reclaim where I wanted, and I had to be the ringleader and kind of go, okay, this is the direction that we are going to go. And I had to stick hard to my guns because the softer side of me was just kind of like, I want to please everybody. I want to make sure everybody is feeling good. Me at my own expense. Yeah. Like literally up till 3 a.m, still cooking and like freaking out and kind of going, oh, my driver can't go. So I'm going to go from Fairfield to Granite Bay to Midtown to downtown to all over. And then kill myself. And I had to, once I did that, it made everything more simplistic. Mm-hmm. And then I started going, okay, now I'm going to start playing with sauces. And you start realizing that if I make a large batch of 3 different sauces, then I could change 3 different meals with the same protein. So it's a lot of these things that started kicking in from my older retail years that we did at a much grander level and kind of going, why am I not doing that? Like that just makes sense to be able to take these principles that I'd witnessed. And that was when the light bulb went off and I kind of went, oh, okay, I've been trying to do this the wrong way. And then you kind of learn and the efficiencies started happening. I was like, oh my gosh, every meal is looking exactly the same.
And it opens up your time and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's just, you're speaking right to me because I'm one of those. I'm like, oh, I got to please everybody. And in the beginning, you're trying to grow your client list. So it's like you're almost having to say yes to certain things. So I think understanding and learning the turning point of like how you navigate that pivot, right? And being okay with, you might lose people or it might not be for you, right? You might not be for them, same thing. So it's right where my mind went.
Yeah, that was, right when you said that, there was one of my biggest like strength moments or taking my strength back was I had a client. She was very, it's the most politically correct way to say this. She was very particular about a lot of different things, which I've dealt with a lot of, very picky clients, which is no big deal. It's part of the business. Yeah. But this was, she wanted the impossible. It was something along the lines of she wanted a caloric intake which would not match up with the protein. So I was basically customizing, making the impossible, trying to make it possible. And it, without going into too much detail, because I don't want to offend anybody, but it was basically one of those things where I had to cut ties with her and say, you know what, I don't think that this program is going to be the best for you, because I was killing myself for one client, whereas I could have been building up 20 others.
Right.
And I spent so much attention on this one client that I was like, this is not worth the bang for the buck. I mean, I'm stressing over this. And I had to have that very real, uncomfortable conversation. But once I did, she didn't bat an eyelash. She was like, okay, no problem. Thank you. And then and I'm sure she just went right to the next one, and which is no problem. But I had to be okay with that. I had to go, okay, some clients are going to be with you a long time. Some are going to be intermittent and some are going to be one and done. And that's okay.
So who is the ideal client for PandaMomo?
I would say my ideal client, are going to be like, I always like the clients that are on the go, that really just want to make a baseline transition in eating real good food. Now, I don't necessarily mean really good food, but the food is good, but real/good quality food. That really just want to kind of take their health back, because ultimately at the end of the day, like, I work out and have to eat completely different at 46 than I did in my 20s. I could eat a bag of Oreos, go to bed, and still lose 5 pounds.
You eat 10 bags of Oreos.
Yeah, right? and it's just totally different. So I think that the wellness, the older I get, and if I can see the help that it's doing to my clients. I've had clients with extreme ailments, like health, and I never for once, and let me preface this by saying, I don't ever claim 100% that my meals are going to cure anything. But what I will say is they are clean ingredients and it's real food, and people can bank on that.
And just in general, when you eat healthier, I'm a few years older than you, you feel better at any age, but it becomes very obvious the older you get. If you eat something bad, it throws everything off. Like eating consistently healthy, you just feel better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a couple questions, and before we wrap it up. So you've talked a lot about things that sound that might have been unexpected, like when opening a business. So let's talk about the things that not everybody talks about. So when you started off your business, talk us through just a little bit about some of the surprises you had with maybe you're dealing with food. Did you have to get certain licenses? You had to get your health insurance. Did you have to get other types of insurance? Yeah. And what were some of the big surprises you're like, I just didn't expect this?
Yeah. So I think one of the big things is, so like for the business to start on up, I had already had my food service management certification, which was a great leg up. If I had just not known any of that stuff, I would have had to have taken that class all over again. So I already had mine. So a lot of the food standards and how things should be stored, how things should be cooked, was already ingrained in my brain from doing countless health inspection walks in my previous years. As I continued to level up, I went from doing everything in my home because, few clients here and there, it's no big deal. But as you continue to level up, I had to go into a commercial kitchen, which really made everything lightning years easier because, it's an hourly, it's a great company. They rent out all the equipment. You go in, you bulldoze everything, you blast on out, but you get insured. The health department walks them, so they're the ones held liable. So you actually have the insurance. You've got a clean place to work. The deliveries are done within like a couple hours. They're transported in coolers, which is great.
Wow.
Catering events. It was interesting because the meal prep got me an audience to go into catering, and I would say over the past year I've dove into catering way more. And catering those are my fun events. I really enjoy doing the catering. And I enjoy the meal prep as well, but the meal prep's the bread and butter. The catering is the fun stuff. And, but then you just realize, part of it's showmanship and figuring out what those, just like any client in any business, you realize you have to listen. What do they want?
Yeah.
And then figure out how you can get them to where they need to be. And I can imagine it's no different than in insurance as well.
Yeah, I would say it's no different in any industry. I'm a big believer on that. What we call it needs analysis. Like, what is your need? Let me make sure I understand that need. And then can I fulfill that need? And if I can't, that's okay. Yeah. You can go somewhere else. So I want to talk just for a minute on health insurance. Obviously, that's what we're in and that's what we do. So when you made that transition from the corporate, how did you figure that out on your own? And what are you doing?
Yeah. So what ended up happening with that was I went from being fully insured, fully benefited, having everything ready to roll to having nothing. And that was terrifying. Luckily enough, I had a game plan to kind of get some things like kind of taken care of. So the twins were taken care of. So it wasn't just like, oh, everybody, the teeth are what you got, that's it. But once again, I had a phenomenal support system around me. But then as you continue to level up, you have to start looking at that and how much is it going to cost? I have no idea what to do because unfortunately, when I was with the bigger companies, they already had the guardrails put together. It's like, hey, sign this right here, and you pick this person or this person to go with your health insurance.
Yeah, I can imagine, and everyone we talk to, it's a big stress. We know it. We're in it every day. A lot of people that make that transition, they don't think about it until it's too late.
Yep.
And then we're having the conversation we can help you, but it is such a stress for people.
Yeah.
So I have a couple more questions, and I have a staple question that I want to ask. I'm sure Natasha does as well. Before I ask those questions, anything else that you want to just say about your business or let everybody, your potential customers or your existing customers, about your business?
I would just say that the people that have worked with me, who know me, just thank you so much for all the support. Everything that you guys have done have just really given me a lot of hope and a lot of consistency, but just have really helped me learn. And everybody's been patient with me through the lows and the highs. And to future clients, feel free to just shoot me a message through my Instagram, which is PandaMomo05 on Instagram. That's the best way. Send me a message if you're questioning anything for a corporate event, for catering, even a backyard barbecue. I handle big and small. I've got a wedding on the agenda coming on up, so I'm doing a lot of these big events. But every time that I get a booking for clients or anything along those lines, they're going to get the best of the best out of me. They're going to get a fun time. I engage with the party that I'm at. They're going to get great quality food. They're going to have a kind of a ham in the background as far as I love engaging with everybody, but they're going to have a lot of fun and they're going to get some great food that they can just simply sit back and relax. And I think that you're not just paying for the food with me, whether it's catering or meal prep, you're paying for your time because I will take all of that off of your plate. The shopping, the prepping, the cooking, all of that stuff. So my job is basically you're paying for your time to be able to not have to worry about any of that stuff. I'll take care of all of that.
That's incredible. And it's incredibly important.
Yeah.
We've hosted events. I've had events with the family, and that's the last thing I want to think about.
Yeah.
I want to show up and I want to have a good time and I want to say, oh, this is fantastic food.
Yeah. And think about it this way. When you end up doing those events, you're stressing about that. You're not engaging with your family or your friends because you're like, oh, wait a minute, there's something on the grill. And
there's
then
a
you gotta
lot
jump.
to take care of. Yeah. I always said that when I get rich, it was like, what would you like? Most people are like, oh, I have house cleaners also. I'm like, I just want somebody to cook me 3 meals a day. Like, I don't have the patience for. I'm not good at it. My fiance literally tells me I'm not allowed to wing it in the kitchen. So it's one of those. It's just not my forte. So I have such an appreciation for people who can do it and do it well, and the convenience that you're talking about is, like you said, a big event, but also the meal prepping is like a really big thing. So. I can see how it helps a lot of people.
Okay, my staple question is, and take a moment to think about it. Everyone answers this differently. And we define it differently depending on where we're at in our life. We're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. What does success mean to you? What does it look like to you?
It's interesting that you mentioned that because this has actually been something that's been in the forefront of my mind a lot lately. I would say in the past few months more so. It's one of the things that I think about when I'm with my girls, when I'm with my girlfriend, when I'm with my friends. And I think true levels of success is really just all about fulfilling the purpose that you know you're meant here for, if that makes any sense. Like for me, food is so much more than just like feeding people. With me, it legitimately at my core gives me an adrenaline rush to be able to know that I'm providing something for somebody. And it's a food of love thing. It's really like if I'm cooking for you, that just shows how much I care for you. And I think I'm not doing it because I have to do it. I'm doing this because I could easily go back into the corporate world, easily. And I've had a few different options to be able to kind of do that. And I've chosen to stay in this role because I feel like this is more of the purpose that I'm sent here for. And I think that the success level of having my girls still want to curl up next to me on the couch and watch a goofy movie, or going for a run with one of them, or taking them to the gym with me, or having them cook with me, having that downtime with my girlfriend, being able to just either be silly or go on a big adventure. Those are the things that matter more to me. And I think that add more fulfillment to your life versus just the material stuff. Because at the end of the day, I've had plenty of friends that are very, very wealthy. They have all the material things in the world, but there's a sadness about them as well. And we've talked about it. So the ones that I'm talking about right now, they're not going to be offended that I'm saying this because we've had very deep conversations. And it's just about finding that balance on what your level of success is. And I think that I'm still striving to mine. I think it's a never ending journey, but I think I'm more aware of what's more important to me now than I was when I was with my corporate world. And my corporate world was just complete and total chaos at times. And my life now can be chaos, but at least it's controlled chaos now.
It's your own chaos.
It's my own chaos. Yes, it's my own baby. But I think that at the end of the day is the thing for me, is just my family, my friends, and just being at peace with myself.
I love it. An incredibly deep answer. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do too. So it leads me to my staple question. So knowing what you know now, the business where it's at right now, if you could talk to your 30-year-old self or any 30-year-old business owner, startup, entrepreneur, doing their own thing, what advice would you give a 30-year-old?
Oof. Okay. Well, I would say the first thing would be to take a deep breath and recognize immediately that you're in this for the long game. And then ask yourself this question: how bad do I want this? And I think recognizing that you're going to be in it for the long game, and I think also recognizing how bad do you want this, and then I would ask them the next question would be, what was the hardest you've ever had to work at to get something that you want? And I think you got to break it down in that perspective, because if they're like, oh, I've had everything handed to me just like quick, they're not going to have the longevity or the grit to be able to hit those times where all of a sudden, I mean, I remember having those weeks where I had 2 clients since I left because everybody was on vacation during a holiday push, and I had 2 people order and no catering gigs, and I still have bills. So you have to be able to weather and rally and figure out ways to make it happen. So I would ask that 30-year-old, what's the hardest you've ever been pushed? And then, all right, so be ready to hit 10 times worth of that, because however you got hard that was, it's going to be 10 times harder to chase that dream, but the payoff will continue to hit over and over again.
So
Just
good. I asked
can't.
for the listeners, but I really asked for myself.
Oh,
So
that's good. It is.
this is really an advice.
Yeah.
And it is true. Being able to weather it. Yes. And that's not in a society where it's the instant gratification and it is the person that blows up, on one video. Sometimes you lose perspective of like, oh, no. Like it's a grind to get here. So it's fantastic advice. That's a great answer.
It's so funny. I got to say this one little thing.
Yeah.
So like with me, it's all about like the connections. And I think that's an underlying statement with everything that we're talking about, whether it's insurance, business, food, doesn't matter. You have to have those people connections. And one of the biggest things I inherited from my mom was very much like she never met a stranger. It was just like she connected with everybody. One of the big things is I was in Costco in Elk Grove, and I live in Folsom now, but I go to Costco so much that I had gotten used to seeing this one lady who checks you out, and she's a like sweet lady. But I hadn't seen her in a long time because I've been out in Folsom. So I went through her line and she just gave me the biggest hug. We don't know each other beyond like me checking out in Costco. But it was a series of, her reaction was so great. It was so genuine. And then I took my daughter through Chick-fil-A line, literally the next morning. And these 2 sweet kids that work at, because that's my deal, is I'll take my daughter there. But these 2 sweet kids that are there, they're just, they run up to the door and they're like, Harley, what's up? What you got going on? But it was, and I'm not saying that because it's just like I'm overly talkative. It was a very humbling moment, because if I had been a jerk to that lady at Costco when I was going on through and just been like, just go through, it's such a nasty way to go through life. If I had treated the kids over at, Chick-fil-A, these, they're young. I mean, they must have been, there couldn't be no more than 19, 20 at best. And if I had been rude to them, that toxicity can just infect so many different people. So one of the biggest things that I end up doing is I want to make that real connection. Because if you're going to get me for a catering or anything along those lines or meal prep, you're going to get all of me, my real self, my authentic self. And I think that at the end of the day, that's what people are going to gravitate to, because anybody can be a car salesman. Anybody can be a BS artist. Mm-hmm. But what's going to get people coming back is you coming to the table as you, and you coming to the table as you. That's what's going to separate from different brands. And I think that that's the secret sauce to anything. And it's going to feel awkward. It should feel awkward at times. Yeah. It should feel like, because we live in this realm of constant judgment and like with the whole like social media realm. And that's one of the things. That would be the other thing I'd tell the 30-year-old that you were just talking about is don't compare yourself to other people and where they're at. They're at where they're going to be at when they're supposed to be there. You're going to be at where you need to. And that's something that like I said, I have a lot of realtors and friends that are super successful. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I should be where they're at right now. And why did I take this jump? And I'm like, no. My girlfriend reminded me, she said, babe, look at where you're at in comparison to 2 years ago. And it wasn't until she asked that question, it made me slow down and kind of go, man, she's right.
Yeah.
And you have to celebrate those wins, but keep your eye on that prize.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Reflecting on the good and not just the challenges is so important.
Yeah.
Because when you look back at those 2 years, I would imagine it's incredible growth. And it can get easy to get lost in how many clients you have or whatever the issue of the day is versus everything that you've accomplished.
Yeah.
So fantastic conversation. I want to say thank you. I appreciate you coming on and chatting with us.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. This was fantastic. Very, very, very fun. Love the energy in here. And I think what you guys are doing, providing this stage for so many young entrepreneurs or veteran entrepreneurs, I think is just great for future generations, the young bucks that are coming up. They need to know these stories. So I think you guys are doing an amazing job.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you
for being so real.
Thanks.